Welcome to my channel, The Historic State. In the cloistered world of international diplomacy, appearances are everything. Polished manners, sharp suits, and powerful titles define the players. Beneath the veneer of civility, however, dangers lurk, and true strength often hides in the most unexpected places. Today, we tell the astonishing story of a critical moment inside a foreign embassy, a fortress of diplomacy that became a fortress under siege. It's the story of Ambassador Richard Sterling, a man of immense power and even greater arrogance, and his simple male secretary, Arthur Finch, a quiet, almost invisible figure whom the ambassador routinely dismissed. He thought Arthur was just a glorified errand boy, weak and inconsequential. He was catastrophically wrong. When an elite team of terrorists stormed the embassy, taking hostages and threatening to shatter international peace, it was Arthur, the man everyone ignored, who revealed a past so lethal, so precise, that he single-handedly turned the tide and proved that the quietest man can often be the most dangerous. The British embassy in the bustling capital of Valmira was a beacon of diplomacy, a fortress of civility amidst a volatile region. At its helm was Ambassador Richard Sterling, a man who epitomized the old guard, loud, self-important, and utterly convinced of his own brilliance. He saw himself as the linchpin of international relations, and everyone else as mere supporting cast. This extended most acutely to his personal secretary, Arthur Finch. Arthur was quiet, meticulous, efficient, but entirely unassuming. He spoke only when spoken to, moved with an almost ethereal silence, and never drew attention to himself. To Ambassador Sterling, Arthur was a perfectly adequate, if somewhat dull, administrative assistant, a glorified paper pusher, as he often scoffed in private. Ambassador Sterling's contempt for Arthur was barely concealed. He saw Arthur's quiet efficiency as a lack of ambition, his calm demeanor as timidity. "Finch, are you sure you have a pulse?" he'd boom, much to the amusement of his other staff. Arthur would simply respond with a polite, "Yes, Ambassador." When Arthur, in his meticulous review of security reports, subtly tried to highlight potential vulnerabilities, Sterling would wave him off. "Nonsense, Finch. This embassy is a fortress. Focus on my itinerary, not your flights of fancy." Arthur never argued. He simply observed, listened, and learned. His mind, unbeknownst to anyone, processing every detail, every angle, every weakness. He was a shadow, and in the shadows, true observers thrive. The veneer of civility shattered without warning. A thunderous explosion ripped through the main gate, followed by a torrent of automatic gunfire and the terrifying shouts of masked figures. Terrorists. An elite, ruthless cell had breached the embassy, taking the diplomatic staff and visitors hostage. Panic erupted. Ambassador Sterling, caught in the open, shrieked for help, his pomposity dissolving into abject terror. "Security! Get them out!" he shrieked, his voice utterly useless. Arthur, initially seen diving for cover like everyone else, now looked up from behind a fallen table. His eyes, usually mild, were suddenly sharp, focused, a predator's gaze in the chaos. A masked terrorist, his weapon raised, advanced on the terrified Ambassador Sterling. Time seemed to slow. Just as the terrorist moved to grab Sterling, Arthur Finch moved. Not with panic, but with blinding, lethal efficiency. He didn't have a weapon, so he used what was at hand, a heavy, ornate pen from Sterling's desk. With a precise, devastating strike, he disarmed the terrorist, his movements fluid, brutal, and entirely unexpected. A quick, practiced follow-up, and the terrorist was neutralized, slumped to the ground. Ambassador Sterling stared, his mouth agape, unable to process what he had just witnessed. This wasn't Arthur. This wasn't his paper pusher. And then, Arthur Finch disappeared into the chaos, only to reappear moments later, a silent, deadly ghost. He moved through the embassy with an almost preternatural awareness, anticipating the terrorists' movements. He wasn't armed, but the embassy itself became his arsenal. A chair leg became a bludgeon, a fire extinguisher, a blinding, disorienting weapon, a piece of broken glass, a lethal blade. His movements were precise, economical, reflecting years of ingrained, deadly training. Close-quarters combat, stealth, tactical awareness. He employed them all with chilling proficiency, neutralizing terrorists one by one, ensuring their silence, preventing them from raising alarms. The ambassador, witnessing flashes of this silent, brutal ballet, felt a cold dread creep into his heart. Who was this man? None. The remaining terrorists, a hardened core, had rounded up the principal hostages, Ambassador Sterling among them, in the secure communications room, preparing their demands. Arthur, after systematically clearing the lower levels, moved with silent purpose towards their position. He assessed the situation in a heartbeat. Multiple targets, innocent lives at stake, no room for error. He created a diversion, perhaps a perfectly aimed piece of debris clattering down a corridor, drawing one terrorist away. Then, in a flash of movement, he entered. The fight was over in seconds. A series of impossibly swift, devastating strikes, and the remaining terrorists were down, neutralized with silent, brutal efficiency. The hostages were free, stunned, unharmed. Arthur stood over the fallen, his breathing heavy, but his eyes still cold, calculating. The local security forces, alerted by the initial explosion and finally breaching the outer defenses, stormed into the embassy minutes later. They found a scene of utter carnage, neutralized terrorists, and terrified, but safe, hostages. And standing calmly amidst the chaos, almost as if he'd simply been waiting for them, was Arthur Finch. A high-ranking British military liaison officer accompanying the relief force stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes widened in disbelief. Good God! Finch? Arthur Finch? Is that really you? He gasped, recognizing the unassuming secretary. The liaison officer turned to a bewildered Ambassador Sterling, whose face was a mixture of shock and utter confusion. Ambassador, the liaison officer stated, his voice filled with reverence. This is not just Arthur Finch, your secretary. This is Major Arthur Finch, retired SAS. One of the finest, most lethal operators this country has ever produced. A legend among the regiment, known for his ghost-like efficiency and ability to disappear. He disappeared off the grid years ago. We thought he was dead. Ambassador Sterling stared at Arthur, then at the officer, then back at Arthur, his own puffed-up world crumbling around him. The simple paper pusher he had so casually scorned was a living ghost, a legend, a force of nature. His humiliation was absolute. Arthur Finch eventually faded back into his role as a secretary, though his presence now carried an entirely new weight. Ambassador Sterling, forever humbled, never again looked at support staff with disdain. The quiet man, the ghost in the machine, had saved them all. Arthur Finch's story became a whispered legend in diplomatic and intelligence circles, a stark reminder that true power often operates in silence, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment to reveal its lethal precision. Never betray the historic state. If this incredible story of hidden power, shattered arrogance, and a silent hero's precision left you speechless, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Because here, we believe that the most dangerous weapons are often the ones you never see coming.